Welcome to the JOMA Preventative Health Podcast, hosted by the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association. We provide you with up-to-date information on health topics geared towards the Orthodox Jewish community. This podcast content is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice or as a substitute for the medical advice of a physician.
Welcome to the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association of JOMA podcast. I'm your host, Elisa Minkin. I'm a general pediatrician and proud JOMA member. And today I'm really honored and really excited to be talking to Rivka Klein-de Graaf. Now, before I start, first of all, I love when people reach out to me, whether they want to be a speaker, whether they have an idea of someone who should be a good speaker or some topic I haven't covered yet. Please reach out to us at health, HEALTH, at joma.org. That would be greatly appreciated. Now, Rivka is someone I actually sought out. She's a family member's alternative medicine practitioner. And you may wonder why a mainstream medical podcast would be doing that. And I have no intention of being controversial here. I just want to provide information. And in general, I am taking an evidence-based stance. That is, I'm not attempting here to promote non-evidence-based medicine. I want to have a conversation and find common ground, but also discuss a lot of important issues that come up between alternative medicine and mainstream medicine with Rivka, who is amazing. And she's humble, she's honest, and I want to approach this with humility and curiosity. And so I hope that if you're from an alternative, a mainstream medicine background, please approach it with that same humility and curiosity. And also, if you are a firm believer in alternative medicine and not so much of mainstream medicine, I hope you come also prepared to listen to both of us. First, I want to define what complementary and alternative medicine is. I'm taking this from the Johns Hopkins University website, and they discuss the different types of complementary and alternative medicine. They say many different areas make up the practice of complementary and alternative medicine. In addition, many parts of one field may overlap with parts of another field. For example, acupuncture is also used in conventional medicine. In the United States, CAM, which is complementary and alternative medicine, we're going to abbreviate that to CAM, is used by about 38% of adults and 12% of children. I just want you to stop and think about that for a minute. Almost half of adults are using forms of CAM. And by the way, if you're a physician, if you don't ask, you will not know that. So traditional forms of alternative medicine include more mainstream and accepted forms of therapy, such as acupuncture, homeopathy, and oriental practices. These therapies have been practiced for centuries worldwide. Traditional alternative medicine may include acupuncture, Ayurveda, homeopathy, naturopathy, Chinese, or Oriental medicine. And again, remember, I'm reading from the Johns Hopkins website here. Body. Touch has been used in medicine since the early days of medical care. Healing by touch is based on the idea that illness or injury in one area of the body can affect all parts of the body. If, with manual manipulation, the other parts can be brought back to optimum health, the body can fully focus on healing at the site of injury or illness. Body techniques are often combined with those of the mind. Examples of body therapies include chiropractic and osteopathic medicine, massage, body movement therapies, Tai Chi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, yoga. Diet and herbs. Over the centuries, man has gone from a simple diet consisting of meats, fruits, vegetables, and grains to a diet that often consists of foods rich in fats, oils, and complex carbohydrates. Nutritional excess and deficiency have become problems in today's society, both leading to certain chronic diseases. Many dietary and herbal approaches attempt to balance the body's nutritional well-being. Dietary and herbal approaches may include dietary supplements, herbal medicine, nutrition, diet. External energy. Some people believe external energies from objects other than or other sources directly affect a person's health. For an example of external energy therapy is electromagnetic therapy, Reiki, Qigong. I do not know I'm pronouncing this right. Qigong and Reiki. Mind. Even standard or conventional medicine recognizes the power of the connection between mind and body. Studies have found that people heal better if they have good emotional and mental health. Therapies using the mind may include meditation, biofeedback, hypnosis. Senses. Some people believe the senses, touch, sight, hearing, smell, and taste can affect overall health. Example of therapies incorporating the senses include art, dance, and music, visualization, and guided imagery. So that's all from the Johns Hopkins website on CAM, or complementary and alternative medicine. So let me introduce Rivka Klein-de Graaf. Rivka has a bachelor's in political science from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has studied reflexology at the School of Natural Healing in Jerusalem, classical homeopathy in that same School of Natural Healing in Jerusalem, has done study sessions with Simon Tafler, who is a holistic homeopath who integrates naturopathy, nutrition, bodywork, and craniosacral therapies, has studied the Wondrous Order of Plants with Michal Yakir, who I believe is both trained in botany and homeopathy. Inside Team CRR Global, which is a relationship systems coaching. Personal development with Maggie Carter. Do not know who she is. ORSC, Organizational and Relationship Systems Coaching, CRR Global, most recently. And also studied with Jeremy Scher in the Dynamis School, who is a homeopath who also trained in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Rivka says, we take so much more on our journeys than just our profession. While homeopathy forms the basis of my professional education, I added many other tools over the years. I have gained a lot of perspectives and insights from books, studies, meetings with my patients, and conversations with colleagues. All of these have allowed me to create my own individual way when meeting patients and practitioners. My approach is both practical and spiritual and is based on my deep belief that we can all grow and learn. She has developed a method called the GPS Within with Dorit Shoshani. It's a method to navigate interpersonal relationships. This GPS helps you get unstuck from challenging situations with yourself and others while you stay in the driving seat. They use this method in their day-to-day practice and teach workshops in person and online. So welcome, Rivka Klein-de Graaf, and I hope we can all enjoy and learn from this conversation. Welcome, Rivka. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It is very exciting to be here.
I am so excited. I've been looking at my calendar for months now going, when am I going to have this talk? And it's today.
Oh, it is. Yep.
So super excited. And all the way from Israel. So people should know that it was very hard. We had to work it out. Not as easy as same time zone. So I appreciate that. And I have to say that I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since I heard your first voice note. I will say, everybody knows I represent, evidence-based medicine. I'm an evidence-based, science-based medicine, kind of gal. I like to joke. And I am not here to promote any complementary and alternative medicine, whether it's homeopathy or anything else. That's not what I'm here for. But I've learned over time to be much more humble and much more curious. And I can't wait to learn from you. That's how I look at it.
I'm not here to promote any medicine either, neither CAN nor allopathic medicine. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Exactly. And I really think that unfortunately, there's been a polarization. I think in America anyway, I don't know how it is in Israel right now. In medicine, it's very similar to politics. In fact, they've become deeply intertwined, shockingly enough.
Yeah.
COVID. And it's built a lot of distrust of mainstream medicine, by the way, which I, as a mainstream medicine, professional, find frustrating. And I know a lot of other healthcare professionals are finding it very frustrating.
It's very sad and very concerning here in Israel too. Mm-hmm.
So what I love about you is that you're not anti-mainstream medicine.
Nope. I'm pro-human.
Exactly. Can you tell me more about what you do?
Sure.
Thanks.
Well, I came from a family. I grew up in the Netherlands in a nice Jewish family, actually far away from Amsterdam. So that had its whole challenges by itself, but beautiful, lovely parents. My dad actually worked for a pharmaceutical company. It started called Organon, and later on was called Axopharma, which I'm sure, they made the NuvaRing, for example. He was involved in that. So I always, and later he worked a lot on the development of psychotropics. So I was really raised, in a very sciencey family. And at the same time, my mom being an educator, I also kind of had that kind of background. And I used to think that homeopathy was just a bunch of quack. And I really did not relate to it at all. And then when I made Aliyah, when I was 18, I had a friend who was really into homeopathy, and her homeopath happened to visit, and I actually thought, well, you know what, I'll give it a try. I had these knee pains. I actually never ended up doing his treatment because I didn't really believe in homeopathy. But the meeting itself was very beautiful, and I think it touched a lot on what you and I have been talking about. That it was actually one of my first experiences where I felt that I had the time to really talk about what was happening with me, and I was listened to, and everything I told was accepted, and was used to help me. And that experience actually turned me to homeopathy, this experience of deep listening. And it's something that I aspire to do for my patients. So after I studied political science then, and I thought, I came from a family where you have to do an MA and then a PhD and stuff like that. But I thought, well, you know what? How about I will study this homeopathy stuff, and I will see if that's something that I will like to do. And I'm 51 now, so I've had a practice for about, I think, like 24 years. Wow. In the beginning, like I was this small pizzalach, young girl, really. And I look now, young woman. And thank God, Hashem organizes the universe that in the beginning you don't get such serious cases, but slowly. Actually, pediatricians here in Modi'in, the city where I live, would send people to me. Like I remember very early on in the, Modi'in is a new city. I remember very early on, I was invited to a panel once with a pediatrician also, who is also still practicing, a very, very nice man. And I was in the panel together with him, and already it's interesting, right? How life brings you to situations like that, and people were able to ask questions. And so I've always been pro working together with people. I feel like, I have something that I see in our conversations you don't have, or other doctors don't have, which is time. Right. And I have. I've also chosen, even though not all homeopaths do this, there are plenty of people in alternative medicine here who work in the Kupot Cholim. I don't really know how you would call this, a health
clinic.
Health clinics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was offered jobs there in health clinics, but then it would have meant that I would have maybe half an hour for a patient, which probably sounds like a dream for you.
Oh, what I would give for half an hour.
Yeah, and that just really is not enough for me to be able to go deep enough in order to really see what's going on. So, but maybe, I can talk for hours, right? I can keep talking now, but maybe you have a question.
Right, I do. I have a lot of questions. First of all, how much time do you take and what do you do?
Yeah, so for a new patient, well, first of all, I can spend up to 20 minutes just making an appointment with the person, because when people call me, I will speak to them personally. I do have an answering service, but that is, that's just to make sure that I get everybody's appointments. I will schedule a phone conversation to check if I'm a good match, because I need to hear, what is going on for this person. If I feel I need to know if they're seeing other practitioners. Sometimes people come, and they get very desperate and they make an appointment with an acupuncturist and with a shiatsu person and then with a homeopath, and they go to regular medication, regular doctors. And I won't take patients like that, because I just feel, I tell them, give things a try, like see what happens in your acupuncture sessions. And then if you have given it 6-7 tries, or you have finished your course of antibiotics, or, then come and see if things are right for you. And I also check if I feel a rapport with them. Now my practice is big enough that I can be picky, right? And most of my, actually all of my practice is word of mouth. I don't advertise. And part of the reason is because the people who are pleased will send similar people to them, and the chance that I will be able to help them is bigger. So I spend about 10-20 minutes. We look for a time, and then for a new person, I really take all the time I need. So I will plan, I think, for a new appointment between 2 and 2.5 hours. Yeah.
My mouth is falling open.
Yeah. Well, imagine that an 80-year-old person comes, like, or let's say even a 70-year-old. I don't have a lot of 80-year-olds in my practice, but I do have quite an amount of 70-year-old people. So I will go into family history. So I will ask them even about their childhood. I will ask where their parents came from. We know epigenetics is a big deal. People here,
Right.
in Israel come with Holocaust backgrounds, or people that come from, Iraqi, Moroccan backgrounds. They can come from families where, let's say they had a huge high standing when they were in Iraq, came from very rich families. Then their grandparents came to Israel, became very poor. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and
Sure.
when you have that background and you understand what is going on for a person, well, then you understand, what's going on. I had a woman in my practice who with very severe OCD, and she has things with touching fabrics. And she said, I really don't understand why fabrics are so important to me. And when we went deeper, we found out that her grandparents, who were in Tunisia, were actually people who sold fabrics.
So interesting.
Very, very interesting. And they had this, and I mean, I won't go into her whole personal story, but then I have this information that a regular doctor would not be able, right, to get. And it doesn't mean that, when she has severe pneumonia, I won't tell her, go get an X-ray and let's check.
Right. I want to talk more about work. Right. I'm sorry. I want to talk more about working together, because I think that one concern people listening will have is it's either or. And what if somebody has something that could be treated by mainstream medicine and they were coming to you and the actual cure is from the mainstream medicine, like antibiotics or, what concerns me the most is there are people who go for alternative medicine instead of cancer treatments. Like, that is extreme. But I saw an article in a mainstream health magazine where they were promoting alternative medicine over mainstream medicine, which is to me the most egregious. And it happens.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
People get very scared, and I just think in general, it's just not smart to really only see one thing. I think, when I thought about like how I even would explain homeopathy, there's so many lenses we can put on to look at reality. So in general, I feel there are many ways that lead to Rome, and part of the path for a patient to get to their health is to figure out what roads fit them. And so in general, I will always ask people, like, let's say we were talking about new appointments. I will always ask people, to see their blood test. I used to work a lot with pediatricians. Now I have a little bit less, like, small kids in my practice. As the practice grows, the problems grow. But let's say in the beginning, there's a lot of asthma here in Modi'in. Warts and homeopathy really work well. So people would come, I would ask for the printout of all the visits that they had. And then I could see diagnosis of the pediatrician. I could see what medication they gave. And then you could see what helped. Yeah. So that is of tremendous value. In homeopathy, it makes a difference if there's wheezing in the left bottom corner of the lung, or in both lungs. That can be a differentiating fact for me. So why not use all this wealth of knowledge and things that I don't know, that I'm not always sure about. I can look, let's say people come with skin problems. I can look at something and say, that looks like that. I'm not allowed to make diagnoses. I'm also not interested in making diagnoses. I want to have a professional look at that, and ask people, please make an appointment and come with the diagnosis. Let me know. You don't always know what is going on, and so it's important. Plus, let's say people come with skin problems, right? You can have a skin problem. Let's say you can have arthritis and you have problem on your skin. You can have Crohn's disease and have skin problems. It's like, you can't just treat skin there. You need to understand what's going on a deeper level. And so, it's silly to just look at one thing. And for example, it can also be silly to only look at things as psychological problems. As we were talking, in our preparatory conversation, I was thinking of my husband whose aunt died, and he got terrible stomach aches afterwards. And we were sure it was because he was so sad, until I got so worried about him. He had lost all this weight and he kept waking up at night. And I felt so silly. But after he finally went to the doctor, he was just diagnosed with a parasite. You don't think I ran to give him antibiotics? Of course. And he felt better in 3 days. There's no arguing with that kind of stuff.
I want that louder for the people in the back.
But then you can also go the other way around. Like, let's take a case of orbital cellulitis, right? Like a mosquito bite near the eye of, like, let's say a 3-year-old. And in the beginning of my practice, I had an anesthesiologist who was devout allopathic doctor, but she had her kid with an IV antibiotics in the hospital every month because somehow mosquitoes thought he was very yummy. That was in the beginning.
No.
They didn't have a lot of trees, and so there weren't a lot of birds, and so there were really tons of mosquitoes here. And he would get orbital cellulitis. He would get huge eye. And she said, "Can you try to help me with homeopathy?" And we were able to keep her child out of the hospital. And
wait, I just need to interject something medically here. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
For some reason, toddlers tend to get, not all of them, but a certain subset tend to get incredibly robust swelling from mosquito bites. There's even a name called Skeeter syndrome, where your histamine response is insane. And it can be confused with a periorbital cellulitis, which is inflammation of the skin around the eye. Orbital, by the way, is deeper, and that's super serious. So I'm sure that child was not being admitted with orbital. They might be admitted with a diagnosis of periorbital for IV antibiotics. And guess what? Maybe they didn't have it. Maybe they just had bug bites.
Wow, look at that. So first of all, look at this. This is like the perfect example of why working together is so important. Yeah.
Right.
It was many, many years ago. I mean, maybe 20 years ago, this story that I'm telling you. I haven't looked at his file. I remember this orbital cellulitis. That doesn't mean a thing. Yeah. So, but this is really, really important, and even that, let's say I've had very swollen bites, a spider bite that you can treat with homeopathy, but I will be very careful, right? I will make sure to have a ballpoint around. Mm-hmm. I will have them visit the doctor. I will have them send things. And of course, I tell them, get antibiotics so that you have it at home. Let's make a timeline of how long we can treat with homeopathy. And if I'm not happy, I tell them to take it, and then nothing is the matter. People get very, there is this fixed mindset, growth mindset kind of explanation. People get very scared and very rigid. And there's no reason to be scared because there's so much support of the universe for all of us around. And especially if we combine forces, right?
Well, combining forces, right. I mean, I don't have anybody like you here in America. I'm still looking. I would be delighted to, because I think that you bring so much to the table and so much that I can't do. And I think I have to have the humility to say, what are my limits? I think there's so many conditions we're dealing with right now that medicine does not have all the answers for, including allergies, by the way. I think it's really interesting. To be honest, and I was very dismissive of alternative treatments for allergies. And it's taken me a while to understand that somebody can go through all kinds of allergy treatments and still have ongoing symptoms, and that the mind body is connected there too.
I think it is, huh? Mm-hmm. I also think so. I just, I think it's a beautiful characteristic to be humble. I am also.
Right. No, that's why we're having this conversation.
I do think that really this whole time thing, to be a pediatrician or any doctor for that matter, it doesn't really, to only have 15 minutes where you need to build up a rapport, be happy, listen to a person, check them out, right? I know from what I've read, at least research-wise, that it's not always so helpful for a doctor, to do a physical checkup, but that for a patient, it is extremely important, to have their heart listened to and to feel that they got that attention. So I'm not so sure that it has to do with ability. I think that there's a lot of the way that things are organized. There are problems beyond. And then there are problems also from my side. Like, let's say I've had a lot of doctors that I've wanted to work with and that weren't willing to work with me. But there has also been a lot of doctors that have asked to work with me, so as I said before, it's not so much, I think, doctors versus can medicine or doctors versus homeopaths there are people who are willing and feel open and can have the bandwidth, to hear other people's opinion and have the time to do that. And there are people who don't, Yeah.
Right. And it may not even be 15 minutes, by the way. It's really
Look at that. I cannot imagine. I spend easily, because let's say like when we said that I would have 2 hours with a new patient, right? Then after that, I do spend at least an hour looking at their case, finding a prescription. And then maybe what is actually interesting to talk about is that in homeopathy, we give a prescription, but I think a huge part of my treatment is what we call obstacles to remove obstacles to cure, what we call obstacles to cure. So for example, that would be, let's say a child would come to my practice with a diagnosis of ADHD. And I will, and in my conversation with them, I find out that they are 13 years old and they go to sleep around 11:30 at night and they need to wake up at 5:30, 6 in the morning to take a train or to take a bus to get to their school in time. Let's say if they are in the yeshiva, they would have to daven at 7:30. That child's not getting enough sleep. That's not necessarily that he really has ADHD, but the people who saw him didn't have the time to really check into his sleeping behavior. So a child like that, I will educate. I will go to sleep organization, and there's beautiful research done, right? About like, I have a graph that I will send both to the parents and to the kids. I will educate the parents on that. They say, oh, but my kid doesn't want to go to sleep. But I will educate the parents. I say, well, would you go into a car and let your kid not put their buckle on? Never. This is as important. And I talk about brain health and what happens during sleep. Matthew Walker wrote a great book called Why We Sleep. I can tell them to read that. It depends on who I have in front of me. But I do a lot of educating around saying, hey, you can heal yourself. You don't need a pill from the outside. Look at all the things that you can be doing. Or people, 13-year-old girls always come with a complaint that they're bloating. But a lot of them have body image issues, right. And they like suck in their stomach all day long. I'd have a stomach ache if I would be, like that. So then we talk about body image and we talk about when can you find, a clean bathroom in the school. I mean, I have that luxury to do that and to help educate and say, or maybe say, I had a mom who came, she had a third child and she was so overwhelmed and she had all these bad thoughts, about her child. Like she would go near a balcony and think like, oh, I could throw my child over. And she got freaked out by her own thoughts. And I could sit with her and I say, it's normal to think that, but it's not normal to do it. So if you're not doing it, and we could speak together about all these thoughts that she was having and just normalize and calm down. And she didn't need a remedy. She just needed somebody to speak to her. So sometimes I do that too,
Wow.
And then if I would have thought that something was, I followed up with this person, I would have referred her to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist if necessary. I also tell people after a while, you know what, I think it's time to try to Cipralex. That is actually, is that prescribed in the States a lot?
What medication?
It's an anti-anxiety medication. It's called Cipralex. Maybe, I don't really know. Maybe we should look that up and then and see what it doesn't really matter. But let's say I would tell a person, we've tried this now for a while. I think that you should go and give yourself a bit of a break. It's not so bad to take some antidepressives, for a year and a half. Will help you get back to baseline. And then if we feel it's right and you want to, maybe we can work with your psychiatrist or family doctor to get off.
Right. Yeah. I'm still stuck on the ADHD because when you got to there, I'm like, I have to talk about this. I have to talk about ADHD. Okay.
Yes. I want to hear.
ADHD basically is not a diagnosis with a marker, right? So you're describing behaviors. And one of the pet peeves I have is if somebody is quickly filling out a questionnaire and diagnosing it based on observed behaviors, there could be many reasons for their behavior. So I love that you take the time to look and see what's going on with sleep, what's going on in their lives, what's going on in the expectations. Some of these children are expected to sit all day learning in a way that they can't do. And it's created by the environment, not the child. However, That being said, I'm glad you're not anti-medication, whether it's psych medication or ADHD medication, because the pet peeve that mainstream physicians have is somebody will come in and they'll have a CAM mentality. They only want to do alternative, and they're very against medication, or maybe they're not even pro-alternative, but they're just against medication. There is a tremendous stigma of psychiatric medication. And it's extremely frustrating. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who are trying everything alternative in the world, but will not accept the medication. And while they're not doing the medication, the person or the child is suffering.
Absolutely. I've had people call me, and, I always, my heart sinks a little bit, to be honest, when I have people come with, with those kind of phone calls. What I would do in that phone call before I would make an appointment is I ask if there are social problems in school, because I find that very often an indication to start Ritalin. Because once you get social stigma, especially with kids after fourth grade, fourth grade, it can really, really influence. And especially in Israel, where schools are much less individualistic and there's big group mentality, you really, really want to make sure that, a lot of kids with ADHD, right? They have behavioral issues. They don't always understand social cues properly. And I will tell people that I think it is worth their while, and then we can work, let's say in summer vacation, I can work with them with homeopathy. And then we can see if we see other parameters that we can check besides having to sit like a robot for 6 hours, because I agree with you that is not what, and then we can check other parameters. And then what is beautiful in homeopathy is that because you don't only treat the ADHD, let's say I once had a kid with ADHD issues that, he would have this problem at night, like he would lie down and then he would get a super stuffed nose and then he was not able to fall asleep because of it. But that is a great symptom to work with, right? Like, so then I can, if I see that is improving, then homeopathically that would indicate that most likely I can help with concentration or behavioral issues also. But I will also help the parents how to handle the behavior, right? Or you refer on to a psychologist or to a therapist, because it's like pills don't solve things, people solve things.
Right. They say pills and skills, that it's not one or the other. And I think it's pills, skills, and what else is going on, right? It's more than that.
Yeah.
And you can take the time. And that's why for me, you'd be such a valuable colleague to have,
Yeah.
And where I'd be so honored to partner with you if I could, because I don't have the time. I cannot tease out. I'm a big believer in, multidisciplinary comprehensive approach, as opposed to saying, okay, ADHD. Although I have to tell you, sometimes, we let perfect be the enemy of the as good as we're going to get, or we don't accept reality. If reality is the schools are the way they are, you're not going to change that. Right. Like I think sometimes alternative, people are just parents have expectations that are not realistic, and they're banging their head against the wall.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I think that, people sometimes want to look for what's wrong, right? What's wrong in the system or what's wrong in their child. It can be too. And I like more to help people to look in possibilities, Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So those are my thoughts on ADHD. What do you do when a client or a patient of yours doesn't want to do mainstream medicine, but you think they need it?
Oh, I will tell them. It's interesting. I was thinking if I've ever had people, I'm thinking of a couple. I don't have a lot, but I've had patients very, very, very anti-medication or very anti-doctor. And that can be, because of personal stories or things that they experienced. And I will keep encouraging to go and say that I really do feel that it's necessary. And I can imagine that I would say, and I probably have, I don't really remember specific incidents, but that I would say that I don't feel comfortable treating if I don't have a diagnosis for this. And then eventually people do go, to doctors, do go see a cardiologist, do go see pulmonary. And I want people to take conventional medication. I have patients who have very low saturation, like older people with asthma. I just don't understand, like, why do you need to live a life where you don't have oxygen, where you're not breathing, you don't have oxygen? It's like, I really, I feel it's my business to say what I feel is right. Now, if I would feel that I would damage, like, let's say a person is totally refusing to go to anybody, like that's a pathology, to be so rigid that you wouldn't want to go. I don't think I've ever had a situation where I was not able to convince a person to see a doctor. I don't remember having.
I mean, it might also be that you're able to self-select a population that you can work with.
That's
and
right.
It's important to you to work together with mainstream medicine, not against it. And so that's why that's not your experience. But I'll tell you, a lot of physicians, a lot of healthcare professionals are dealing with people who go to alternative practitioners who intentionally foster distrust of the mainstream while they foster trust in themselves.
Yeah, that is really such a problem. And I think
It's
that goes both ways, because some doctors do that the other way around too, right? It's such a pity. Yeah. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about that sometimes we lose sight of the patient in those situations. Like, I think like you and I both, have helped families, like children. And so many times you can see, like, let's say in families where there's divorce and there's a lot of strife between the parents, and you can see, talking about obstacle to cure, right? How children can get extremely concerned about, and then you can start thinking as a practitioner, oh, these parents should be doing this and should be doing that. And I've learned over the years to always bring my attention back to my patient, who sometimes is a 3-year-old, sometimes a 10-year-old, sometimes a 17-year-old. And yes, it's true that parents can do a lot, and it's the child that comes to me for care. And I think in the same way here, it's to encourage patients to think about, like, do you feel that this practitioner is right for you? People, when they come to me, they also often go to other alternative practitioners. And if I see that people are being very extreme, I will speak my concerns. I will ask people, what does your inside voice tell you? When you come, do you feel empowered when you go to this person, or do you feel that you're not being listened to? Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about empowerment, because I'm a big proponent of self-advocacy, advocating for your child.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about what it means to feel empowered or disempowered.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it's very important when people come with concerns is to really listen. What makes people scared, And a while ago, I had a child, a family that came, and I spoke to the mother. The child pulled its hair. It was a very sensitive 3-4-year-old boy. And when he was home with his parents during Corona, there was no hair pulling at all. But when he was going to daycare, there was. And I felt that there was actually a lot of behavioral stuff that I could do with the family. And they had put the child with a psychologist, which I felt like, for a 3-year-old, like, why not empower the parents and let the parents be strong for their child, for their child. I wasn't so hot on how things were approached, because they labeled the child with anxiety. I felt like, he's just 3. He seemed wonderful to me,
Amazing parent-child interaction programs out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the father felt very uncomfortable giving homeopathy. He came, and I listened to his concerns, and he said, I just don't understand how it works. And I feel like it might harm my child. And however much I explained to him, he just did not feel comfortable. And we decided to part ways, and with my blessing, don't do what doesn't feel right for you. It's like, you are the parent, and listen well.
It's so interesting. One thing I'm thinking of is that people do come in with their own personal, I don't want to say bias, but preference. Let's call it a preference. Like, I prefer mainstream medicine. I just do. And I think it works better for me, partly because I believe in it more, right? Which is a whole separate rabbit hole we can maybe go down later or not.
Yeah.
And I think you have to respect that. But also, you're not just doing homeopathy, which we haven't actually defined. And you said to me, I prefer to talk about what I do rather than, rigidly define homeopathy. And I think one of the reasons is because you don't just do homeopathy.
Yeah,
it's a tool in your vast tool bag. And when I read your bio, I saw that you've taken in many different teachers with many different approaches from many different CAM backgrounds, and you put it together with an enormous amount of time and attention and caring and empathy.
Mm-hmm. I've learned mostly with homeopaths. I've also learned system coaching. Yeah, that is right. I just find that just like you are a unique pediatrician with a unique outlook, and I would hope that people would come to you because they love you and they feel that you are there to take care of them. it's the same way with me. It's like not everybody, I don't fit everybody. I'm like a very warm, huggy kind of person. And like for some people, I'm just way too much, I'm way too enthusiastic, warm, embracing, and it just doesn't work for them. And I'm like, well, that's wonderful because there's lots of other people out there who are not like me, right?
Right. Some people really just want a pill or a prescription for something or a letter or whatever. And it takes 5 minutes.
Yes.
And those are the ones you can catch up on your time on.
Yeah. And how wonderful that there are doctors for that. How wonderful.
Or that doctors can catch up and spend more time with the patients who want it. Like you really have to, I think one of the lessons here is to pay attention to what the patient needs. It's so obvious. It's so obvious.
Excuse me, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was going to say that, thank you, that it sounds so obvious, but I think when you're pressed for time, you're thinking, I have to get XYZ done. And it's really hard to let the XYZ go because the XYZ wasn't actually important because the patient came for ABC.
Yeah. I wanted to step in before with care for us as practitioners. I mean, the older I get, the more time I spend on my self-care. And I realize that when I'm good, my patients are good,
right.
Right. And then I have the bandwidth to really see what is going on. And this feeling of being listened to, I just think is super, super crucial, this feeling of being understood. And I think one difficult thing, and I feel this too, to a certain extent, is that sometimes patients don't understand what kind of lens you're looking at them with. So one of the principles of homeopathy is to look as an unprejudiced observer. So to really listen and get information. Whereas I think as a doctor, a big part of your listening is diagnosis, and you are going through your head and you're checking out not this, not that, not this, not that. And your way of listening is very different than maybe what a person feels they need to be understood, but they don't really understand what lens you are listening to. Do you agree with that? Or
so I think you just nailed a problem of an approach that's not going to work for a lot of people. And when I say a lot of people, we have come a long way. We've been vaccinating successfully for a lot of diseases and preventing a lot of classic, diseases. We have effective medications for a lot of, things like, say, strep. I'm always talking about strep.
Yeah.
The majority, a huge percent of what we're dealing with now is either mental health issues or the combination of mental and physical health, chronic disease. It's all intertwined. And these don't respond well to that approach. And in fact, in America, at least, we have a silo approach where if you have a throat problem, you go to ENT. If you have a gastro problem, you go to GI. And everybody's looking at, like you said before, it makes no sense to not put it all together, but nobody is. There's very few multidisciplinary clinics where everybody actually works together.
Yeah. I have patients come to me for that. I have patients say, I just want one spot, and we know that you look and that you will talk to doctors. And I ask actually my dad for a lot of advice for people who come, with medication, especially with psychiatric medication. He's a pharmacologist and a chemist. It is really, really complex. And by the way, talking about strep, I demand my patients take antibiotics when they have strep infections.
Good.
I've had 2 patients who refuse to, and I say, you have a choice. You can take a strep infection. You can take antibiotics once for 7 days or 2 days, right? Sometimes you get a long, slow release antibiotic, or you can get complications and you have to take it for 20 years. You can then choose. Take it once, it will get you stronger so that the strep doesn't need to come back. And that seems to me a much wiser approach.
Right, It is. And again, if you do the wait and see approach, because you want to try alternative medicine first, but there was something simple you could have taken, you may have long-term sequelae, you may have consequences of not treating. Yep.
Even though, in the Netherlands, I'm Dutch originally, the approach is not to give antibiotics, even for a strep, even when somebody's diagnosed with strep. It's
really?
Not even. Yeah. Yeah. I have asked my family members to take. Yeah. People.
Well, is it for adults or children? I'll tell you what, because there is a very specific approach where you just give it when children are at risk for the sequelae of rheumatic fever. That's not adult. So an adult could take no antibiotic and recover from strep on their own. And we are dealing with the problem of antibiotic resistance. And I actually do take the approach of less is more, and the body can heal itself, and ear infections do not necessarily need antibiotics. I do treat strep with antibiotics, even with older kids, more because people hear strep and they want antibiotics, but it's not an unreasonable approach in someone older to withhold antibiotics.
To withhold, interesting, because even children, I mean, I cannot speak for doctors in the Netherlands, but I know it's very, very hard to get antibiotics there. They rather take the risk than, but I have a small practice, right? I mean, I'm just one person. And in my 23 years, I've seen 2 cases like that, which I think
of rheumatic fever?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So one reason we don't have rheumatic fever much anymore is because we treat. I think it's a balance, there's also, I mean, we're not going to go into the whole Lyme disease controversy right now.
Yeah,
I'm actually in that rabbit hole myself as I prepare to talk to a Lyme expert down the road. But there's been tremendous polarization between the groups that say, well, it can never be prolonged and you should never take prolonged antibiotics, and those that are taking it so much and they may not even have Lyme. So there's got to be a middle ground. There really does.
Mental health, yeah. Should we talk a bit about the mental health thing? Because, I have to say, with all the time in the world that it seems like I have, which I never feel I have enough time for my patients, I have seen a huge way more OCD after COVID than I saw before in my practice. And I see way more anxiety, especially in teenagers.
Oh, yes.
And it's very, very hard to treat. And I find that I don't do that on my own anymore. And I get psychologists involved. I get therapists involved. Yeah, because that is just not enough. I see my patients once a month in the beginning. Afterwards, maybe, once every couple of months. And then as soon as they stand on their own feet, they will go and they will, the door's open. They can come back when they need to. But in those situations, I really work together. And I'm really lucky because I have a good network of mental health care here in Modi'in. I've yet to find a psychiatrist that I really love working with. Yeah, it's hard, to find people that you see eye to eye with.
It's problematic, though, because at the end of the day, many of these people do need medication. Not everybody, but many do. And it's this polarization of, I don't want to take medication. I want to treat it alternatively. I haven't tried every option. And people will go from thing to thing to thing. I think one of the reasons you didn't want to treat those patients that are trying to throw everything on the wall and see what sticks, right? Do all things at once, is because they're looking for something I call the magic cure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm guessing that you're on the same page as me, as you don't look at homeopathy as the magic cure.
No, not at all. I look at people as the magic cure.
Right.
Is that once we're able to take care of ourselves and we can understand what our needs are and what our boundaries are. And a part I feel of the treatment that I do is that you learn to observe yourself. And by reporting to me about what is happening with your main complaint, like let's say, somebody comes with a tinnitus, so we observe, when does it get worse? When does it get better? What happens in the times that you have a lot of stress if we give you a little bit more of the remedy? Do we see it as helping? This whole learning to even look at yourself. People would tell me, like, I ask what side phlegm comes from in the nose, left, right, that makes a difference homeopathy wise. They're like, oh, we never thought about that. You learn to take a look at yourself. And we know, right, that observing changes states. You don't need to give medication even for that, but just to learn to look at yourself is so, so important.
You're also helping, right, I'm sorry. You're also helping the person find their own healing path. And that, I think, is empowering.
Yes.
I really do.
I agree.
But I'm going to keep coming back to this. But the problem I have, and I'm sure other, healthcare professionals see this, is people who are absolutely determined not to use medication. And one thing I see, not from you, right, but from the alternative practitioners that I see, even the integrative doctors who have MDs and do homeopathy, whatever, mixed in with their MD, and I do see this, I see it as a trend to, it's your job to heal yourself. You just didn't eat healthy enough. You didn't remove caffeine from your diet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear you.
Yes. I'm not making this up, but this is what I battle against, where the person's saying, but I'm not done working on myself. and they have it on their shoulders when there are medications that are not a loser thing to do, that are not a crutch. I've heard them described by these alternative people as a crutch. Well, okay, if you really need for a period of time till you get your act together, and then you can have a better diet, better sleep, better exercise, better gluten-free, casein-free, take my supplements. That's a whole separate thing about people who have a whole industry, right? I mean, we're not even talking about people who are just out there to scam people.
You know what I think it is? I think when people come with that attitude, it's the attitude of there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. Whereas I think what we are trying to say is that there's a lot right, and let's see what we can do more of that works for you. And, I was thinking of this whole, the neuroplasticity of neurons that fire together, wire together. And if you don't lose it, right? If you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
And I had an interesting talk with my husband this morning on our morning walk. And I said to him, is this whole thing of what we pay attention to grows. And then if you don't use it, you lose it. This works too, that if you approach health and you say that this is what's wrong with you, and then you start focusing on how wrong that is and how you can prevent that wrongness of happening, it's kind of neurons firing and wiring together. Whereas
absolutely.
If you name it, of course it needs to be named if things aren't well. But then you can strengthen things that are going well, and you can tell people that a lot of things are going right for them. It is so empowering for people. And then they don't feel like they need to fix themselves the whole time. They can see they come from a place of empowerment. And I think that's where, it doesn't matter if you're Cam or if you're a doctor, is that if you approach people as that there's something wrong with them that needs to be fixed, or you approach people that they have an ability to grow, they have an ability to learn, or they can get help from other people. And that's a human thing, right? To get help from other sources, then go with it. So I think it's about that. It's about seeing opportunity and not problems. And I think that is an attitude that can be very healing and empowering for patients.
I want to blast that from the rooftops. I love that so much.
Yeah.
If I were the kind of podcaster who took a piece out of the interview and put it at the beginning, this would be the part.
There we go.
I want that louder from the back, from the rooftop, shout out that, because that's something that anybody can do. And unfortunately, if you're disease focused, you may actually make your patient sicker. And it's actually discussed in an interview I did with a specialist in childhood irritable bowel syndrome from a multidisciplinary clinic. It's worth listening to. Gut brain.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Something. It's on YouTube and it's in the podcast. It is really true that, like you said, neurons that fire together, wire together, and we can, for whatever healthcare professional you are, you can promote wellness and you can unfortunately reinforce sickness.
Yep.
Right?
You have a choice there.
Right. But the flip side should never be, it's my responsibility to make myself well. I think that on the one hand, the alternative approach may leave somebody dangling with pressure to do more than they can do. And on the other hand, that hyper-medical approach could be, well, you're sick and we're going to look for more sickness and we're going to keep looking,
I think
Am I making sense here?
I'm
not articulating.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that a doctor who tells his patient, you need to lose weight, also does that.
Right.
Like that is the people often come to me and they say, yeah, well, my doctor tells me I need to lose weight, but I'm not able to.
Right.
It's like that's also putting you could say in English the onus, right? It's putting the burden on the patients and not thinking together like what is happening with you, that it's not working. I mean, between you and me, they could have a thyroid problem, and that's why they're not losing weight, right?
Right. Also, diets don't work, and we are eventually mainstream medicine is moving towards the weight neutral approach to health. By the way,
yeah.
And trying to focus on healthy habits and mental health, et cetera, as opposed to just looking at, the number on the scale.
Yeah.
So that's very, very true. I want to talk a little bit about natural healing and placebo effect, if you're okay with that, because I don't feel the need to try to figure out why people say, homeopathy works for them, or to argue that there's, it's really been proven to work or not work. I want to talk a little bit about how how we can heal ourselves. I said we shouldn't have the pressure that it should be all on our shoulders, but we can become empowered, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's also interesting. I mean, placebo is super fascinating, right?
Yes.
I remember once reading this super. I don't know where it is. I want to find it. Maybe somebody here listens and knows what article I'm talking about. There's an article about placebo pills and how people have done research that red placebo pills help better for headaches and brown placebo pills help better for like they did a whole research about even telling people they gave them placebo, but they knew that if they would look a certain way, then the placebo effect would be even greater, which I just thought was fascinating and also so beautiful, to say to people that they're giving a placebo and that people came back for more of that placebo. It's beautiful when we don't understand things. So I thought that was very interesting.
Think for just a minute, though. We're always dismissive in evidence-based medicine is how much above the placebo rate is it? As if placebo is meaningless.
Yeah, but it's not, isn't it?
No. And for the disorders I've just talked about, chronic illness, mental body, mind, body stuff, the placebo rate can be as high as 40% or more.
Wow.
And ironically, some of the treatments that pass through evidence-based medicine might be 41%. I mean, like statistically, it may be barely above. Like if you really read carefully, or maybe the way, putting aside that evidence-based medicine can be distorted by poor studies, and they say there's darn lies and statistics, right?
It's so interesting, isn't it? But it could be that a big part of healing is to have awareness, is to understand what is happening to you.
Right.
And I think that the people want to know why they're doing things, and if you understand what is going on and why you can help yourself and how, then you have so much empowerment and I think that helps.
But we haven't talked about validation.
What do you call validation?
Validation means a lot of people have complained that their healthcare professional was dismissive of them. So whether it's they said, hey, I have a homeopathic practitioner, it doesn't work, or they go in and they say, XYZ is bothering me. And they're saying, well, I did blood tests and nothing's wrong with you. It must be all in your head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk for a minute about the importance of validation, whether it's, I think in order to work together with someone who is a sincere healer, not someone who is taking someone's money, right, with the magic cure promise.
Yep.
Right. Which might be even evidence-based technically, but a lot of money. I can think of something off the top of my head, but I'm not going to say. Or, complementary alternative medicine, but really just the promise was more than they could give, and they'll take your money and you'll be left poorer with no solution, no cure.
Yeah. I think sometimes what I've seen in my practice, that people want to find out what is wrong with them, and who, I mean, this happens often with bowel issues, right? I mean, you can have lots of bowel issues,
right.
that you really can't find what the problem is. And then I talk with people about lenses. I said, like, one way to look is to find out if there's something wrong, and it's really wonderful that we have blood tests and ultrasounds and colonoscopies, and then there's what you are experiencing, and you don't need to have somebody to validate that for you. I try to empower people to validate that for themselves. It's like in an ideal world, you don't need another person to allow you to have pain. You can just say, this is not working for me, and then we can move on from there. So, and again, there are many dismissive homeopaths and CAM practitioners and doctors. And I think often it comes from stress, or it comes from a place, we're human beings too, right? We can have bad days or things not going well or extreme pressure. I had a patient this morning that I said I would call at 10:15. I totally forgot. It happens. I wrote her back. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to call you back, and I was in a meeting and I missed out on time. Can I please call you back another time? And I apologize, and we move on.
Right. And that's part of being humble, right? It's not a matter of I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. It's just having that humility and building that trusting relationship. I think that trust is something nowadays that we're really struggling to rebuild.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that it's such a valuable conversation in my mind that we're having, that people can see that, two people from completely opposite sides of the medical fence, you might want to say,
Yeah.
have so much in common. And the commonality is we want to help our patients get better.
Absolutely. And we want to work together with other people who help our patients. We understand that it's not just one path, it doesn't need to be a one for all. Yeah.
One size fits all. No,
like that.
It really doesn't. And I just want to ask you one more thing, because I know that we both have gone over time. I appreciate all your time.
Really? Oh, I thought we just started.
We could sit here all day, and I would be delighted to do this. And I so appreciate your humility and your wisdom that you've accrued over the years.
Oh, I thank you for the beautiful compliment.
I'm absolutely serious. This is an incredible opportunity for me, and I hope that our listeners will appreciate this. I really do. I want one more question for you. What would you say to someone listening to this who is very mainstream medical professional? How can they approach people in their practice who really prefer alternative medicine, complementary and alternative medicine? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I would, no, not at all. No, I think depending on how much time people have, I think rather than dismiss the medicine, I would ask the patient what is helpful for them about going to this person. And then it might very often be time. And then there is a main concern, right, for a medical practitioner, that maybe people will listen to CAM and dismiss, and do harm to themselves by listening maybe to something that the CAM person doesn't know. So I would ask, if I would be in a position of a medical doctor, I would ask them what is meaningful for them about the connection with the CAM practitioner. And I would say, would you feel comfortable running decisions by me so that I can be a partner on your road to health?
I love that. I love that.
And then you have solved everything. You've kept everybody's dignity intact, and you can, not agree. I have people in my practice that go to numerologists. I've never been in my life. It's not something that I would personally do, but I ask them about what's going on there and what people said there, and then maybe it can help.
I'm sorry, go to who?
Let's say a numerologist. Do you know what that is?
A numerologist. If they say neurologist, I'm like, what's wrong with neurologist?
No,
I like neurologists.
Neurologist is good. That's good. It's not alternative. Yeah.
Right, but you know what? Right? It's always safety, and health first, no matter what end side of the fence you're on. And I want people to hear loud and clear that you work together with mainstream practitioners. You do not work against them. And I think that is what makes me trust you and want to have this conversation. But I love the idea of being partners on the road to health. And I wish you were in America, because Israel is 7 hours apart from me.
It is. It's too far away, isn't it?
How can people find you? Right? How can people find you?
Well, people can find me on my website. It's rivkaklein.com, RIVKAKLEIN. And then there is, one of those contact forms. And if they want to,
your practice is pretty full, though, just to be fair, right?
My practice is very full, actually. And I encourage the people that call me from the States. I actually encourage them to see somebody in the United States, because I think, actually, because of our conversation here, it's like I wouldn't be able to have the network that I have here, and I prefer, I do treat virtually, but I prefer to see a person in my practice face to face, full body,
Right.
It's just better. It's better for everybody involved. But we can just be an example of two souls meeting and wanting the best, for ourselves and for our patients. Yeah.
Right. And even if it just opens up people's, other, healthcare professionals' minds to be more understanding and empathic, right? That, like you said, there's more than one path to healing. And it's our job to partner with the family to get to that.
Yeah, with the family. And, and I think that is really beautiful to end with, is that when a practitioner would say to their patient, like, would you feel comfortable consulting with me when, and please know the door is always open to ask me questions. It will be such a delight for patients, because I have so many patients who are scared to tell their doctors that they're coming to see me. And it's such a pity, because sometimes we have huge successes, and then medical doctors don't know, about a person with a chronic disease going into remission, and they don't really understand what happened, right? And so it would be beautiful if we would get to know more about each other's work.
Absolutely. Just approach it with curiosity and humility, and you'll go so far, and your patients will so appreciate that.
It creates trust.
Exactly.
And trust creates healing.
Exactly. We could talk all day.
Yes.
I'm telling you, I have to stop right now.
It's so fun to talk to somebody who agrees with you. Finally, somebody agrees with us.
I love this conversation, and I've been waiting for it for a long time, and it was worth every minute of waiting.
Thank you so much. I have the honor to speak to you.
It's
and
an
to have
honor
me
for
get
me.
to know you. Yeah.
You too. Well, let's continue. Let's continue our friendship. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the JOMA Preventative Health Podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and share this with your friends. For more information, check out our Instagram at JOMA_org. Check out our website, www.joma.org, that's JOWMA.org, or email us at health@joma.org.